It's time now for sports news with Ayotunde Balogun.
Many thanks, Gimba. We start off with basketball, where FIBA has awarded the hosting rights for the FIBA Basketball World Cup 2023 to the Philippines, Japan and Indonesia. This marks the first time in the competition's history that it is to be staged in more than one country. Philippines, Japan and Indonesia and Argentina, Uruguay were the finalists to host the event, due to take place in just under 6 years' time. The decision was made by FIBA's Central Board after the bidders gave final presentations to support their candidatures to host the 19th edition of basketball's biggest competition. In football, Marko Arnautovic's 6-minute goal gave West Ham a 1-0 victory over defending champions Chelsea in the early kick-off in the English Premier League. Elsewhere, Burnley beat 10-man Watford 1-0 at Turf Moor after Scott Airfield scored in the 45th minute. Crystal Palace and Bournemouth settled for a 2-2 draw, while Huddersfield defeated Brighton 2-0. Tottenham Hotspur beat Mark Hughes Stoke City 5-1 at Wembley. And in the day's last game, Leicester beat Newcastle 3-2 at St James's Park. Super Eagles coach Salisu Yusuf has called up 30 players for the first phase of the preparations ahead of the 2018 African Nations Championship billed to hold in Morocco. Familiar faces like Ikechukwu Ezenwa, Stephen Eze, Osaso Koro, Rabiu Ali, Ifeanyi, Kingsley Aduo, Sikiro Olatuboso and Anthony Okpotu made the list. Coach Yusuf said the invited players will test their strength with the country's leading domestic clubs in the annual Super 6 tournament in Kano starting on Monday. NBFL reigning champions Plateau United, MFM, Akwa United, Kano Pillars and Eyimba will feature in the Super 6 tournament. An ice sculpture celebrating Nigeria's qualification for the World Cup and that of 31 other countries competing in the prestigious fiesta will be unveiled on December the 29th. More than 40 ice sculptures will be erected in Moscow to celebrate countries that qualified for the 2018 World Cup in Russia next summer. The sculptures will feature symbols from the participating countries, including ice replicas of their architectural gems, football stars and literary characters. Reports say the Nigerian sculpture will feature Super Eagles captain John Mikel Obi. Lewis Hamilton has officially been crowned a 4-time Formula One world champion at the FIA's annual awards ceremony. 2 weeks after the checkered flag fell on the 2017 F1 season, Hamilton was back in the limelight as the Englishman collected his 4th driver's title at the glittering ceremony in Paris, France. Hamilton became only the 5th driver in F1 history to reach the 4 championships landmark when he clinched the title in Mexico in October. Newly appointed Sauber driver Charles Leclerc won the award for Rookie of the Year, while Red Bull's Max Verstappen won Personality of the Year for the 3rd year in a row. And that's a wrap in sports news. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. The news at 10 continues shortly.
Palestinians have taken to the streets of the West Bank and Gaza Strip for a 3rd day, angry at US President Donald Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as the Israeli capital. Earlier, Israel carried out strikes on Gaza in response to rocket fire aimed at southern Israel, killing 2 Palestinian gunmen.
Palestinians have kept up with protests against US President Donald Trump's declaration of Jerusalem as capital of Israel, but with scenes far less intense than in previous days. But in the West Bank city of Bethlehem, Palestinians set fire to tires and threw stones at Israeli troops who fired tear gas. 2 Palestinians were killed in clashes with Israeli troops on the Gaza border, while scores were wounded. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has described the US decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital as entirely provocation and urged protesting Muslims to exercise restraint and stay within the rules of law, peace and democracy. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi says the status of Jerusalem should be determined through dialogue and negotiation while complying with the United Nations resolutions. But the Islamist group Hamas is not on the same page. The group has urged Palestinians to abandon peace efforts and launch a new uprising against Israel.
Starting from today, there will be no route to retreat, no red line for us. Palestinian people will demonstrate their struggles and rage and will expand military actions to everywhere, especially the West Bank.
The status of Jerusalem has been one of the biggest obstacles to a peaceful agreement between Israel and the Palestinians for generations. Israel considers all of Jerusalem to be its capital, while Palestinians want the eastern part of the city as its capital. Where all these would lead, only time will tell.
Iraq has announced that its war against Islamic State IS is over. Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi made this known in a conference in Baghdad, adding that Iraqi troops are now in complete control of the Iraqi-Syrian border. This comes 3 years after the militant group captured about a third of Iraq's territory, and 2 days after the Russian military declared it had accomplished its mission of defeating IS in neighboring Syria. The jihadist group had seized large swathes of Syria and Iraq in 2014 when it proclaimed the caliphate and imposed its rule over some 10 million people. But it suffered a series of defeats over the past 2 years, losing Iraq's second city of Mosul this July and its de facto capital of Raqqa in northern Syria last month. And the main news again. Nigeria's main opposition party, the People's Democratic Party, today began the process of selecting its leaders that will run the affairs of the party for the next 4 years. Only 3 candidates made it to the final race for the chairmanship after 6 candidates from the southwest withdrew from the race. Also today, PDP leaders suspended Senator Buruji Kashamu before the party's national convention. The senator representing Ogun East in the Senate, however, describes the exercise as illegal. And US President Donald Trump's comments continue to cause violence in Israel as Israeli airstrikes killed 2 Hamas members. And that's how it's been on the news at 10 tonight. I want to thank you so much indeed for being a part of it. On behalf of everyone here, have a splendid night rest. Good night.